Welcome, everyone, to Inquirer Live at Gameday Central alongside EJ Smith. I am Olivia Reiner. We are live from the Eagles press box here at the link, getting set for the Eagles Sunday night matchup against the Miami Dolphins. EJ, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Olivia. It's another night game. It feels like we're going to have a lot of these this year. It feels like the season's really about to pick up. So I know we have a lot of news to get to. I'm excited to get into it.
Absolutely. First Sunday night game, first one of the year. So, everyone, as EJ just said, we have a lot to talk about today. However, you can be a part of our conversation. We want to hear from you. If you are over on inquire.com/Eagles Game Day, you can leave us a question or a comment down in the chat, and we will get to some of your thoughts toward the end of our show today, a section we like to call the fan zone, the best section, in my opinion, of our show. So, EJ, as you mentioned, a whole lot of injury news, health report, that sort of thing. We're going to talk about it all right this moment. Before we talk about who is playing, because good news is for Eagles fans is that there are a lot of players that will be active in today's game. However, let's talk about who we know is not playing. Safety Reed Blankenship out with a ribs injury, and cornerback Bradley Roby out with a shoulder injury. How do their absences impact the game today?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to have a huge impact. When you look at this Miami team, like the first thing that your eyes are drawn to is this passing attack. Tua Tagovailoa at the controls and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, first and foremost, kind of as the two receivers that you have to really account for. And when you look at injuries in the Eagles secondary, I mean, they've been able to kind of muddle through injuries in the first 6 weeks, but this is a unique challenge. This is an offense that gives even really talented secondaries a lot of trouble. When you're starting to look at undrafted rookies, guys who really don't have a long track record in the league at slot or at safety, that can really start to complicate things. So, those injuries are definitely major ones. Bradley Roby looked good the last couple of weeks, and Reed Blankenship's been their most consistent safety. So, we can talk about some of the options that they might have to, replace some of those guys, whether it's, Sidney Brown, who's coming back from a hamstring injury at safety. Mekhi Gardner played in a pinch last week against the Jets. And then at slot cornerback, there's a lot of guys kind of in the mix there. Josiah Scott, the Eagles signed him back off of the Steelers practice squad earlier this week. There's Eli Ricks, who's coming off of a knee injury that was he suffered against the Jets, and Josh Jobe. He's been more of an outside cornerback, but these are kind of the guys in the mix there. But none of them are guys you really trust to be one-on-one against guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. So definitely going to be a big part of the game. And yeah, there's that's like something that we're kind of looking out for right now as we're watching warm-ups.
Mm-hmm. We just received the Eagles inactives list. As we already mentioned, no Blankenship. We don't have Roby, but the other names are pretty much to be expected at this point. Quarterback Tanner McKee is inactive. Running back Rashad Penny, linebacker Patrick Johnson, defensive tackle Moro Ojimo, and then tight end Albert Okwebunam. So that is the list of players. One other notable name that we'll also mention there now from the Dolphins' point of view, the cornerback Xavier Howard is out with a groin injury. EJ, how major is this for the Dolphins?
Yeah, I mean, anytime that a team's going to be missing a starting cornerback, kind of flip it against this Eagles passing attack, A.J. Brown in particular, that's a huge deal. I mean, I think that the Eagles are going to like their matchups on the perimeter, no matter who's on the other side. But, Xavier Howard, I mean, it's funny. I talked to Darius Slay about him a couple of weeks ago. There's just such a mutual respect among cornerbacks with him because of his ability to lock guys up in man coverage. Again, if he had played, I think the Eagles still would have tried to, involve A.J. Brown in the passing game. But missing him just like last week, when Sauce Gardner was out, I think that kind of opens up an opportunity for the Eagles offense for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, EJ, you mentioned Darius Slay, a guy who's coming back from injury this week. Let's talk about some of the players that the Eagles will have at their disposal this week, especially those that were injured against the Jets. I mean, guys were just dropping like flies throughout the game. But good news for Eagles fans, right tackle Lane Johnson dealing with an ankle injury this week, left the first drive of the Jets game. He is active today. Tight end Dallas Goedert dealing with a groin injury. Wide receiver Devontae Smith, a hamstring injury. Cornerback Eli Ricks, a knee injury. Defensive tackle Milton Williams, an ankle injury. All of those injuries sustained during the Jets game. All of those players are active for today's. I mean, it's tough. These are all, especially the first three, those starters there. Those are very impactful players, but in particular, Lane Johnson. The fact that he is active after seeing just the extent of his injury, what it appeared to look like on the field, the fact that he didn't come back, how mind-boggling is it? The fact that he is playing today.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly mind boggling. His track record suggests that he's the type of player that can play through pain. But I mean, yeah, when you look at the injury he sustained, when you watch it back on film and you see the angle at which his ankle got rolled up, it definitely is like, remarkable that he's playing. I remember seeing him midweek in practice and I almost couldn't believe that he was practicing. And then, yeah, for him to be out there today, I mean, he's definitely a player that you want to keep an eye on in the first couple of plays, like just to see how he's able to, take on a bull rush or, kind of testing that ankle out. But yeah, I mean, it's remarkable. It's almost like remarkable how unremarkable it is that he's always been able to kind of play through these types of things.
As they say, the best availability, or excuse me, the best ability is availability. I butchered that. And
I
Lane
disagree with
Johnson.
that notion too. Like if you're being good is what's most important, right? But anyway, I mean, we're available all the time, so I guess maybe I should agree with you there so that I can take some credit. Sell myself.
we we can have a whole conversation about that. Get a little philosophical, but we'll continue along. Talk about some of the players that are going to play today that did not play last week. You already mentioned cornerback Darius Slay, who missed last week's game injury. He'll be active today. Safety Sidney Brown making his return after 3 games, out with a hamstring injury. Defensive tackle Jalen Carter missed last week with an ankle injury. And then Marlon Tuipulotu back after 2 games that he missed with a triceps injury. Again, some major players, especially in Carter and Slay. A couple of starters, but man, as you already mentioned, Sidney Brown could potentially have a big role, whether it's at the safety position, in the slot, going into today's game. Who are you going to have your eye on today?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like, we talk so much about the slot cornerback and the safety spots. I think Sidney Brown, it's going to be interesting to see how he's used. Earlier in the season, we saw him in a slot role a little bit more, like on early downs, kind of like as a run supporting guy in the box. But I mean, with all the options they have at safety, I think that you might see him more on the back end. And then in terms of the other guys coming back, like I don't think you can understate the importance of having Darius Slay, like, back in the lineup against this receiving core. I think that Miami's obviously, listen, they've got smart coaches, they've got a good coaching staff. I'm sure that they're going to try and exploit the matchups on the inside, but at the same time, having two, cornerbacks who you trust in those 2 spots is important. Like Jalen Carter's impact as a pass rusher is, you can't really overstate it at this point. He's a big part of what they do, but having the guys, that have the credibility on the outside is really going to be important against this Miami offense that's been just mowing through teams so far this season.
As far as practice squad call ups, the Eagles have called up wide receiver Julio Jones for his first game in Eagles uniform. Convenient that it's the Kelly Green uniform game, so we'll get to see Julio Jones in a Kelly Green jersey. And also cornerback Mekhi Garner, who was called up last week as well, going to potentially going to have a role in this week, at least at the very least as a backup. But considering the fact that the secondary is so banged up, just keep an eye on him, and we'll see exactly what happens in the secondary. Let's transition into our latest headlines section of our show. I think we have to start with the 2 quarterbacks. They're not going to be on the field together at the same time, of course, but they will be the big talking point of this game today. In Jalen Hurts and Tua Tagovailoa, they're meeting up for the first time in the regular season. They were teammates back in Alabama in 2017 and 2018. Jalen Hurts notably benched in the 2017 national championship game. EJ, when you look at the careers of these 2 players, where they are now, 2 of the best quarterbacks in the league, how did their origins, I guess, at Alabama shape them in where they are today?
Yeah, I'm going to drop a shameless plug here. I wrote about that on Inquirer.com this week. You can find that over there. I think that the dynamic between the 2, when you talk to coaches that knew them during that time, some of their teammates at the time, it was half support and half fiercely competitive. It's a weird dynamic. And, I talked to Julio Jones about it a little bit too, like this dynamic at Alabama where you can be a star player, but there's younger star players coming in right behind you. And, there's a level of competition that comes with that, but also a level of, mutual respect and kind of like having to be a leader to someone who is trying to take your job. So I think it's definitely a complicated dynamic. But I think for Jalen and Tua, both of them, benefited from it. Even like, one of the things I wrote about was that the year that Jalen was, on the bench as Tua's backup in 2018, he made a lot of strides as a passer in that season, just because he took the pressure off of him to make plays, in games because he was not playing. So, throughout practices, he could focus on, developing as a passer, as a processor. Alabama was running an offense that was similar to the Patriots offense at the time, and basically he had that opportunity to do that. Now, listen, I'm sure while he was in it, and even now, he probably wishes he wasn't, on the bench that season. But I think when you look at where he is today, it was beneficial for him to kind of have that moment to take that step back and kind of work on, some of the deficiencies in his game. So I think it's fair to say that neither of them would be here today if it weren't for that relationship and that dynamic between the two of them where they pushed each other. But yeah, definitely an interesting and, like I said, complicated dynamic between the two of them.
Well, roughly 6 years after that national championship game, they meet today on this field at the link. The Eagles, in particular, are coming off of a pretty ugly loss, I would say, to the New York Jets, a 20-14 loss in which the Eagles turned the ball over 4 times. Jalen Hurts responsible technically for 3 of them, 3 interceptions that he threw. You look at the Dolphins; they're 5-1. They boast the #1 ranked offense. And you look at the Eagles' schedule ahead; it is not getting any easier from here on out. The Commanders next week. However, after that, you're looking at the Dallas Cowboys a couple of times. They've got Kansas City. They've got the Buffalo Bills, the Seattle Seahawks. That takes them up to Week 15. How critical is a win in today's game going into a really daunting, tough stretch, EJ?
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles didn't lose back-to-back games with Jalen Hurts last year, so it kind of shows you how rare of a situation this has been the last 2 years. I mean, I don't think that the sky will be falling if they lose to this Miami team. I think it's a good Dolphins team, but it certainly is. Like, when you look at this stretch, it's going to be hard to get wins. Each of these games is going to ratchet up in intensity, especially if they drop one or two early, like you just mentioned. So, I definitely think it's important. I think that Miami is going to look at this game as a measuring stick. Kind of like, they haven't played as many, really solid teams quite yet. And I think if they can leave the link with a win here, a road win against a team that was in the Super Bowl last year, I think the league is going to take them more seriously. So definitely high stakes for both teams. I think that Miami's really going to be up for this one. And I think the Eagles are going to have a real challenge because of, again, like this Miami offense is just unbelievable. So.
You talk about the Miami Dolphins offense. They're averaging over 37 points per game. Tagovailoa leads the league in passing yards and passer rating. He's tied for passing touchdowns. Of course, he's got quite a few talented weapons in his offense at his disposal, and wide receivers Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Also, running back Raheem Mostert having a great season so far. That being said, EJ, I want to bring this up. They have beaten these 5 teams, right? They've beaten the Chargers, the Patriots, the Broncos, the Giants, and the Panthers. What do those teams have in common? They do not have winning records, and they got crushed 48-20 by the Buffalo Bills. Are these Dolphins as good as the record suggests?
Yeah, so you're telling me to pump the brakes a little bit here. I think that's fair. I try to use DVOA a lot, which adjusts for the level of competition, but there's only so much that can really tell you. And I think that even their DVOA is skewed because like you score 70 points in the game, of course your offense is going to be ranked really high no matter who you're playing. So I mean, is there a chance that this Eagles defense is one of the better units that they'll see, and they could slow down a little bit? I think for sure. I think it's going to start with the pass rush for the Eagles defense. It's going to be hard because Tua Tagovailoa leads the NFL in time to throw. He gets the ball out quick. I think this offense is more built around run after catch opportunities and getting Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, Devin Achane before he got injured, all those guys in space and letting them kind of create after the catch. It's going to be harder for the Eagles to deal with that because of the fact that they're a little bit lighter on the back end. But yeah, I definitely think that there's a chance that this Miami offense kind of comes back down. But I don't know if I was predicting it, which we'll get to later. It's a nice tease. Like I don't know if I'd predict it, but there's certainly a chance.
Certainly a chance. All right, let's get into our favorite segment of our show. It is the fan reminder. You can head on over to inquire.com/Eagles Game Day. You can send us your questions, your comments, and we will potentially answer them on our show. Let's start with this comment here from Gary R. Flynn 62. They say that speed kills and absolute speed kills absolutely. A lot of absolutes there, but one thing is for sure is that the Miami Dolphins offense is very, very speedy. How much are the Eagles going to have to account for their speed, and how are they going to be able to compensate, especially this banged up secondary?
Yeah, so Sean Desai talked about it a little bit earlier this week, and he said that physicality is how you counteract speed. And I think that sounds nice, but it's hard to be physical with guys who can run right by you. So I think you're going to see the Eagles in a lot of soft coverages, a lot of too high shells, a lot of trying, a lot of effort to keep guys in front of them. And then I think that they're going to try to. I think that the defensive line is going to try to impact the game. And I think, I think that's probably what the game plan is going to look like. Listen, there aren't many great plans for a team this talented on offense, so it's not like they're probably not going to hold this offense to like 7 points or 14 points. I think the best way to kind of keep up with this Miami team right now is to score points. To play them almost like you would play the Chiefs. Where it's like don't settle for field goals. Keep your foot on the gas, even if you're up a touchdown or two, because they can erase a lead really quickly with how explosive they are. So defensively, like I said, I think you might see a lot of soft zone coverages, a lot of keeping guys in front of you and trying to rally to the ball. That's kind of that old Jonathan Gannon style a little bit. I think you could see some of that, but I mean, there aren't any absolute answers. To keep the absolute pun going here, there are definitely no absolute answers against a group like this.
If there were absolute answers, they would not be 5-1. So great question there, or even a great thought, a great point there from Gary. Let's take this question here. Not even a question, again, a comment from Path of Rage. For some reason, it's at the link, and they see this as being a humiliating rout of the Dolphins. Not just a loss for the Dolphins, but a humiliating rout of the Dolphins. EJ, listen, Sunday Night Football, the cameras are here, the stars are out, the Kelly Green jerseys are out. People have been looking forward to this game. How much does the home atmosphere play a role in the game today?
Yeah, it's funny. We were talking before we went on about like wondering if the field was going to be in like lesser condition. The Temple game yesterday, Germany, Mexico international friendly. You can still see like the outline of the 18-yard box around the end zones. But honestly, the field looks like it's in pretty good condition there. So I don't know if that's going to slow them down. Listen, I mean, Miami. I think they're up. I think they're up for this game. Maybe they're a little too up. A little too excited for this opportunity. Maybe, comes out of the gate stumbling a little bit. Listen, I mean, it's like you said, it's any given Sunday. A lot of weird things can happen in primetime games. And, Miami, could they be like, ready for regression to the mean? Certainly could be. So, listen, again, if I were to predict, maybe I wouldn't predict it, but, there's definitely a chance for anything to happen. So.
All right. Thank you, Path of Rage, for your comment. Let's take this comment here from JGalt52. They say, Jalen Hurts creates, he doesn't execute. Opposing defenses are onto Jalen, and now they have to just keep him out in the pocket, and they just have to keep him in the pocket and take away his novelty act. Oof, this is a blowout. Dolphins 48-17. That is a humiliating rout, I would say, of the Eagles in this particular prediction. But the question in here, I think it's something that we should talk about, EJ, is are opposing defenses onto what the Eagles offense is trying to accomplish? Last year, the Eagles offense was flying high at this time of the year, and they're heavily on their, in more of an RPO focused offense. What is the situation this year, and why haven't the Eagles appeared to be as dominant as they were last year offensively?
Yeah, I don't buy that the offense is like completely crashing, to earth. If you look at the Jets game, I mean, like some fluky turnovers. It reminded me of the Washington game last year, where it was kind of one of these like. Even like Dallas Goedert related, like Dallas Goedert kicks the ball to a Washington defender last year, and like Dallas Goedert gets the ball punched out and directly into another Jets defensive lineman there. I think some of the turnover stuff is fluky. I do think that there's some validity to like this offense looks different than it did last year. Last year I felt like there was an answer for everything. They were trying to make defenses wrong schematically. I think this year it's been a little bit more, for lack of a better term, like hero ball. Throw it to your best players and let them kind of make plays. And listen, it's not a bad formula. Teams, I mean, the Dolphins do a lot of that too. Get the ball in the hands of your best players. It's like it's not a bad way to go about things. But I do think that we haven't seen them have as many answers, making defenses, no matter what they do, making it wrong. So I think that's part of it. But listen, I think the Eagles offense is kind of due for a bounce back game here. This Miami Dolphins defense is not great, and I think that the Eagles are going to be able to put up points against them. So I don't really necessarily think that the Jalen Hurts, a novelty act. I don't buy into that too much. I think that he's been up and down. I think it's fair to say, but I think he's still been pretty effective through 6 games, and I think he's going to have a good game tonight.
You, Jay Galt, for your comment. A nice little discussion that we had. Thank you all for your questions, your comments, and we look forward to hearing more from all of you in our comment section over on inquire.com/Eagles Gameday. All right, now I am very honored and pleased to welcome in Inquirer reporter, Eagles reporter, Jeff McLean, live in person. Not a recording. He's actually here with us, and we're going to talk a little bit to Jeff about his prediction, things that he's going to be looking at in today's game. And EJ, it is really an honor. We're so happy to have him here. There he is. Jeff, how are you doing today?
The man, the myth, the legend.
Jeff, you doing well? We're happy to have you on the show. What's going on with you?
Oh, we lost him.
We lost him. It's all
right. He's still the myth and the legend. Yeah.
he still is. And you know what? I would say that before we get Jeff on, I think maybe we can just talk a little bit about our own predictions and what we're looking forward to in today's game. Oh, we might be getting him back. So before we get in, I really want to get out our crystal ball. You know how much I love this segment of our show.
There I am, guys.
He's back.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yeah,
you're only actually a couple seats away from me, but So what are we talking about? Run game? Eagles run game? Is that what we want to dip into?
Well, I think the big question for you, Jeff, as you've been getting ready for this week, what matchup is most intriguing to you in today's game?
Yeah, I mean, again, look, last week the Eagles didn't run the ball very much, and when they did, they didn't run it very well. So I think that's an area they certainly want to improve going into this game, mostly just to kind of protect Jalen Hurts, right? You don't want Jalen to have to drop back 50 times a game and just putting way too much on his shoulders because he's already a big part of the run game. So you have DeAndre Swift, you have Kenny Gainwell, you have Boston Scott. Get those guys involved a little bit. Look, I'm not a big, balanced guy, but I do feel like they do need to do a little more of that in this game against the Dolphins, just to keep them honest. Now, look, Vic Fangio, we all know his defense very well at this point because it's Jonathan Gannon's scheme that he had here previously, and it's a scheme that Sean Desai pretty much runs as well. And, he'll take the running. They'll allow you to run the ball. They almost consider that a win against an offense that's as explosive as the Eagles is. So don't get too into the run is probably what I would say to Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson, because then you're kind of taking away the advantages the Eagles are going to have on the outside with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and the recently acquired Julio Jones, because you look at that secondary, and they're missing guys as well. We all know Jalen Ramsey, he's still not back yet. And the other side of the ball, Xavier Howard, we just found out here that he's going to be inactive. So certainly, yeah, run the ball, but, do it wisely. Don't do it too much. Don't do it in situations that it's almost as if the Vic Fangio is baiting you to run too much.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jeff, I hope you already have your crystal ball out. What is your prediction of today's score?
Yeah, look, I think there's no reason to think that the Eagles can't win this game. I agree with EJ. I heard what he said earlier that, I think Jalen bounces back. He didn't play poorly. He played great. In fact, the first 3 quarters of that game, was just those last 2 drives were not. He was getting hit a lot, and he just kind of struggled down the stretch there. But I think he bounces back. I think they're going to score a lot of points, and the Eagles could easily win. But I'm going to go with the Dolphins because I can't get over the fact that the Eagles secondary is so battered at this point. And you look at the safety position, you're going to have a rookie there. You're going to have an old guy in Terrell Evans. And I just think with the Dolphins receivers, it's going to be hard for the Eagles to kind of keep them in check and keep them from having big explosive moments. So I got the Eagles the Dolphins winning, shall we say, 37-31.
All right, Jeff. Well, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your prediction. And just remember, everyone, if you haven't checked out Jeff's podcast, Inside the Birds, Covering the Birds, all good stuff over on inquire.com/Eagles. You can check out his podcast. Jeff, it's been real. Thanks for coming on today.
Good to see you, Jeff.
Thanks, guys.
All right, EJ, it's now just the two of us. I want your prediction. What are you thinking about in today's game?
Yeah, Jeff and I sometimes have a tendency to have similar scores, and this is another case of that. I have the Dolphins winning 38-34. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I wrote in my prediction it could turn into a Big 12 type of game where it really comes down to who has the ball last or something like that. I think that, Jeff's point about the Dolphins kind of daring you to run is a really good one. I think the Eagles are going to have to be careful not to try and play like ball control or try and do the time of possession thing. I think with this offense, it's just hard to do it. I mean, I think the game script is going to be a part of this. Is like, can the Eagles get out to an early lead and then kind of have the Dolphins trying to play catch up? But again, you can't get too infatuated with a lead here because like. This Miami offense can put up a touchdown or two really quickly and kind of shrink your lead, and then you're kind of scrambling. Are you going to try and stick with the run? Are you going to go back to the pass? So I think there's an avenue for the Eagles to win the game. I think it involves starting quickly, making the Dolphins have to take deeper shots, take shots in general. And then letting the pass rush impact the game. But right now, if I had to, again, I've kept saying, if I've had to predict, I would probably go with the Dolphins here. I think that they're, just rolling offensively. And I think that, we haven't really seen the Eagles offense in a shootout quite like this. And I'm not sure, if I could really take them in a shootout with such a talented, again, momentum filled offense like the Dolphins.
Everyone, if you were looking for a contrarian view, you are not going to find it from me. I'm going to continue along on this trend. I'm picking the Dolphins to win 35-8. I agree with both EJ and Jeff, especially looking at the Eagles secondary. It does make you a little bit. I don't really know how this is going to shake out with Terrell Edmonds and Sidney Brown coming in, being put in a spot where he hasn't played that much at safety this season, and he's coming off of 3 games out with an injury. It's a tough spot to be in. I do not envy him for that, but it's a spot that he has an opportunity to take advantage of. That said, in this thought experiment, it is very challenging to pick the Eagles over the Dolphins, considering the fact that the Dolphins have the number 1 ranked offense, and they have been as successful as they are. I'm going against playing my own devil's advocate earlier when I talked about, brought up the opponents that the at this point in the season. But I think that it'll be another close one. But that said, I think the Dolphins will come out on top. But we'll see. All right, let's move over to our Inquirer player picks. We're going to talk about some players that we have our eyes on in today's game. EJ, who you keeping your focus on?
Yeah, I'm going to stick. Listen, I've gone to Devontae Smith 2 weeks in a row. It's gone very terribly for me. So I'm going to go with A.J. Brown this week. I'm going to stick with somebody who's kind of rolling. I think that just the way the Eagles offense is kind of built right now, where they're at, I think that A.J. is kind of the one that props it up. And there were times where it was like this last year too. Where it's kind of like when you need something, you kind of just call AJ's number and let him fix it for you. So I think that there's going to be some of that this game. Especially if they get down early, I could see them start to just take shots to AJ and see if he can get by whoever's in front of him. So yeah, I'm going to go with AJ. I apologize to Devontae because I was tempted to be loyal, just stick with it until it worked. But yeah, I'm going to go with AJ this week.
Yeah, maybe you were his curse, perhaps, EJ. You've gone with him for the last 2 shows.
The curse of the Smith, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. One other note about A.J. Brown. Today, if he records over 125 receiving yards, he will have done so for 5 straight games, which would tie the NFL record set by Calvin Johnson back in 2012. So it's a big if. 125 receiving yards is obviously a lot of yards. However, he's already done it in 4 straight games. We'll see if he is going to be featured in the offense once again. Obviously, as we all know, he is one of the trio that this offense really runs through. That said, my eye in today's game will be on quarterback Jalen Hurts. How is he going to respond after the Jets game? His worst performance since back in 2021 against the Giants, when he threw 3 interceptions in that game as well. It's his first regular season loss since week 10 against the Commanders in 2022. So how does he respond after a big a loss like this? That's something that I'm going to be curious about. I think we've discussed multiple times on this show how calm and posed he typically is, and that this offense doesn't tend to, like, if something goes wrong, that they don't tend to look shaken up. However, I would say last week that the offense looked pretty shaken up at the very end of the game. So it's kind of uncharacteristic. I'm curious to see if he is able to respond to his liking in today's game. All right, everyone, it is time to wrap up, but the party is not over. You can continue to hang out here, inquire.com/Eagles Game Day, to follow along with us throughout the game. We will be commenting live in real time, and we want to hear your thoughts as always. So should be a lot of fun. We'll see you over there.
Make sure also to stay up to date on all of our Inquire Sports coverage by subscribing to our Sports Daily newsletter. You'll see our most recent articles along with other Phillies, Sixers, and college sports coverage. Is anything going on with the Phillies these days? I really don't know. A lot of the articles referenced throughout the segment will be there, so be sure to go over there. Yeah.
You can keep up with Philly's most seasoned beat reporter on Uncovering the Birds with Jeff McLean. A new episode dropped earlier this week on Friday. You can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts, or you can go to inquire.com/podcasts. That's it for today, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into Game Day Central.